Hey, Canada, meet your new Prime Minister. For the first time in history, Canada has a Prime Minister who has never held elected office. Mark Carney is a banker, a globalist, and a World Economic Forum insider, and he was simply appointed. And what else? He claims to be a Catholic. In fact, he was called Britain's most influential Catholic. But hold on, it's not that simple. He's deeply connected to the World Economic Forum, and even the secular media is questioning his links to convicted child sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. So, does Carney's Catholic label mean anything? Remember, Justin Trudeau also claimed to be Catholic. And what was that for Canadians? What did that mean for Canada? Well, it meant abortion on demand, euthanasia, in fact, euthanasia expanding everywhere at a terrifying rate, and it meant a rise in anti-Catholic hate crimes fueled by the hoax of mass graves at Catholic residential schools. So will Carney be any different? Well, first of all, before we even get into his policies, let's talk about something that, the mainstream media is mentioning a little bit, but won't really go into. Mark Carney's connection to Ghislaine Maxwell. So photos show Carney and his wife socializing with Maxwell at a luxury music festival in England in August of 2013, just 1 month after he became the governor of the Bank of England. Now, some claim that Pierre Poilievre's campaign leaked the images, but let's be clear. It's Carney in the images, not Pierre Poilievre, and Carney's team insists that they bumped into each other at public events and were not friends. Well, maybe, but how many of your wife's sister's old classmates do you regularly hang out with at elite parties? And more importantly, why was Carney, newly arrived in the UK, rubbing shoulders with Epstein's closest associate? Many powerful figures in finance and politics have been compromised through Epstein's network. Even if Carney never set foot on Epstein's island, his proximity to Maxwell should concern everyone. According to the Catholic World Report, Carney is deeply involved with globalist organizations, including World Economic Forum, the foundation. He's actually a foundation board member. In the UN Special Envoy on Climate Finance, the Glasgow Finance Alliance for Net Zero, a green taxes, which is disguised as climate solution, and then also the Canada 2020, which is a far-left progressive think tank. Now, Carney isn't just influenced by globalist ideology. He actually shapes it. So Carney isn't, by the way, also just a Canadian. He's a global player with deep connections to powerful U.S. Democrats. One of his closest connections? John Podesta, the longtime Democratic insider who managed a massive fund under President Biden. And do you remember those Podesta emails that were leaked with Hillary Clinton where he called for a springtime in the church just before Bergoglio was made Pope? Well, that's the connection. Carney also has ties to Gerald Butts, who's the mastermind behind Justin Trudeau's radical policies. Butts now works at the Eurasia Group, a globalist consulting firm where, surprise, surprise, Carney's wife, Diana Fox Carney, is a senior advisor. And wouldn't you know it, the Eurasia Group has secured lucrative consulting contracts with the Canadian government. Surprise, surprise. So, while Carney postures as a man of the people, he's actually a tightly woven piece of globalist power. So, beyond politics, Carney wants to reshape the world's financial system. In 2019, he proposed a synthetic hegemonic currency, SHC, and it's a global version of the digital currency that would replace the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. And how would it work? Well, through a network of central bank digital currencies, this thing that we've been warning about for so long, which is going to lead to government control of absolutely everything you do. And Carney has been one of the strongest advocates for CBDCs, which if implemented, would give governments the power to track, to limit, and even freeze your own bank transactions, as they did to the truckers already in Canada. So this isn't some conspiracy theory, by the way. It's what globalist banking elites have openly discussed. And guess who's leading the charge in Canada? It's Mark Carney. So he also sits on the Vatican's Council for Inclusive Capitalism, run by Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. Yes, that Rothschild. A famous photo shows Carney with Pope Francis, Rothschild, the Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan, and Cardinal Turkson. This council presents itself as Catholic, but its values are more aligned with the UN and WEF than the gospel of Jesus Christ. So for them, Catholicism means Laudato Si and green economics, not the sanctity of life and moral truth. The Vatican's Inclusive Capitalism website proudly lists Bayer AG as a partner, stating openly that their contribution is to, quote, provide 100 million women in low and middle income countries with access to modern contraception, end quote. And what do they push? Well, Jadelin implants and Mirena coils. Both of these are abortifacients, meaning they prevent a fertilized egg from implanting, killing a human life. Now, maybe Carney doesn't know about this. Maybe he's actually pro-life, in line with his so-called Catholic faith. Absolutely not. After Roe v. Wade was overturned, Carney tweeted, and I quote, "I'm proud to live in a country where a woman's right to choose is so strongly supported. But today's devastating decision in the U.S. is a clear reminder that progress should never be taken for granted." End quote. He then went on and he says, well, you know what? Before we even go on to what he says, imagine that, calling it progress to kill children. Nonetheless, he continued, he said, and I quote again, "Our commitment to protecting fundamental rights must be unwavering," end quote. Okay, it blows my mind how they call protecting fundamental human rights, and they're talking about killing children. Anyway, nonetheless, this is an open endorsement of abortion. It's a fundamental rejection of Catholic teaching. Carney is not a Catholic leader. He is a globalist enforcer who will push secular values into Canada even more than Justin Trudeau, if that could ever be imagined, because he's not the puppet that Trudeau was. He's the puppet master. So in all of this so far, we've only touched slightly on his wife. The British media labeled Diana Fox Carney an eco-warrior after she expressed support for the anti-capitalist Occupy movement. And in 2013, she gave the epitome example of how Carney and his wife are elitists. She complained that she couldn't find suitable housing in London despite her family receiving a taxpayer-funded housing allowance of £250,000 per year. That's about 467,000 Canadian dollars, by the way. And that's in public money. So, while lecturing the world about climate change and the need to strap up our belts tighter and, economic justice, and the Carneys, they live like kings on taxpayer money. So what does it mean for Canada? Well, Mark Carney is a Davos man, through and through. He rarely speaks about his Catholic faith because, you know what? It has no influence on his worldview or policies. And yet, the media continues to point to him as an influential Catholic. But let's be clear. Carney's Catholic faith will not shape Canada because he doesn't have a Catholic faith. For LifeSite News, this is John Henry Weston, and may God bless you.